All right. Have you ever wondered what it takes to become a master of wine, especially with a 10% pass rate? It's a grueling designation, one of the most coveted in the world. And on the flip side, Wine for Dummies, the book Wine for Dummies, it's one of the fastest selling wine books in the world. More than 2 million copies, 38 languages. Well, one woman tonight brings all of that together. She's the first woman in America to achieve the coveted Master of Wine designation, and she's the author, the brilliant mind, along with her husband, behind Wine for Dummies. Now, before I introduce her fully, I am just going to check with you all over on Facebook to make sure you can see and hear me. I would love to know where you're logging in from. Where are you tuning in from? What's in your glass? What's the weather? You know, I'm obsessed with the weather. So I'm going to refresh my screen and see if I can see you all. I want to let you know, too, that this Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a bonus Facebook episode or live chat because we're going to be talking about wine and cheese pairing. So mark your calendars and join me then, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's Toronto, New York time. And you, of course, have joined us right now on the Sunday Sipper Club, where we gather every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern to talk to the most interesting people in the world of wine. So I see Paul and Patty are here from Virginia. Jim Clark is tuning in from Canada. Jason Davies has joined us from the UK, where it's very late. He's very dedicated. Gilman has joined us from Connecticut. Paul and Patty, yes, I said you're from Virginia, and these are coming in too quick for me to read, but Lois Gilbert is here from Ottawa. Hello. Oh, from Toronto. Sorry, Lois. All right, we have got a special treat tonight. So let me introduce, hello, Greg Hughes, Marie Walsh, and others are coming in fast and furious. So let me get to the introductions then. All right, our guest tonight is the first woman, as I mentioned, in America to become a Master of Wine. The title represents the highest level of knowledge and proficiency in the wine trade. Currently, there are only 380 people worldwide who are masters of wine, including 51 who are in the United States. She's also the co-author with her husband, Ed McCarthy, of Wine for Dummies and 7 other books with about 2 million copies sold. She is also the wine columnist for the Daily News in New York City for more than 10 years and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Food and Wine magazine, the New York Times, the Wine Spectator, Newsday, and Gourmet magazine. She's the head of the International Wine Center, a New York-based school for wine professionals and anyone aspiring to learn about wine. And she joins me live now from her home in New York City. Welcome to the Sunday Sipper Club, Mary Ewing Mulligan. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
It's so great to be live with you. You know, I've wanted to do this for at least 6 months now.
Yes, exactly.
I'm glad it finally has worked out.
And we're not going to tempt the tech gods, but yes, we have tried this before. And Mary, there have been so many people asking, when are you going to try with, having her back? I said, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. So I think it's working in our favor tonight because it seems like everybody's tuning in, Mary. So I'm just going to jump back to the comments and make sure that you can all hear us. Anne McLean, it's a windy fall evening. Paul are in Suffolk at 47 Fahrenheit. Lori Kilmartin has joined us. Beverly Asleson is here from Southern California. Carolyn Hetke has joined us from Toronto. Fabulous. I'm assuming you can hear us because I asked that question and you're answering it, guys. So, Mary, there's so many things I want to ask you, but before we dive into the world of wine, I always love to get to know our guests as people first. And you have a passion for both yoga and cats. Let's talk cats. I wish I could have a cat, but I'm allergic. So what's the deal with you and cats, Mary?
Well, I'm very preoccupied with my 2 cats right now because one of them we've had for only a month. And my husband was, I almost said collecting cats. My husband was a cat lover when I first met him. And through him, I came to love cats. And over the years, we've had, I don't know, 15 cats, something like that. But we named them all for types of wine.
Love it. So what were some of their names, or are some of their names?
Well, right now we have Julianas, which when we take her to the vet, that can be shortened to Julie, so everybody gets it. And we have Cristal, who is all white, and so she's named for the champagne Cristal. So that's not too much of an ask in terms of a weird wine name. I think it translates pretty well.
Those are great. I love that.
But over the years, we've had Ponzi, oh, my dear, dear beloved Ponzi, who passed, and he left a vacancy for Cristal. And we've had Brunello and Dolcetto and Leoville and a Max in there somewhere because we adopted him from Ed's son, so he had a name already.
Love it. So no $2 Chuck?
No, no, not at all. But just that he had Mouton and Margot when I first met him.
Oh, your husband, who is the co-author of the book Wine for Dummies, and he writes about wine. You were saying you two met because you're wine writers. So did you meet at a wine tasting event, something like that?
We met at a ridiculous event. It was a dinner in Chinatown. The concept was pairing Italian white wines with Chinese food. And I think most people, when they're thinking of a wine to have with Chinese food, they're not reaching for a bottle of Italian white wine. But this was a couple of decades ago, and I was actually pushing a Prosecco way ahead of the times. You know, I was pushing a Prosecco, and Prosecco happens to be great with Chinese food. And so I decided to come to this dinner, and I brought my Prosecco. I heard that there was going to be somebody there who works for a wine retailer on Long Island, and that was Ed. And so I got to know him that night in a group of about 12 people. But it was, except for my Prosecco, the wine and food pairing was ridiculous.
Ridiculous in a good way?
No.
Or not in a good way. No, it didn't work. But the pairing of you and Ed worked.
Yes, it did work very well.
How long have you been married now?
Oh, more than 30 years.
Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that marriage has aged better than most wines then.
Well, you know, wines can age pretty well. They really can. I think we underestimate how well wines can age. Not that any wine can go 30 years. I mean, it takes a special wine to go 30 years, obviously.
Absolutely.
But wines are not as fragile as we think.
And I hope marriages. But anyway, that's a different topic. This is a wine show. So do you have a copy of Wine for Dummies there close by, Mary, that you can show us on the screen?
Well, I do, but unfortunately, this is not the current.
The latest one.
This is not the current edition.
I have a screenshot, and I think everybody's very familiar with the Wine for Dummies and the Wine for the Dummies books. So let's, I'll be showing some screenshots of that, but tell me, what sparked the idea? What gave you the idea to write this? Because it's the original book, Wine for Dummies. Where were you? What happened?
The Dummies series started as books about computers, and so there was DOS for Dummies was the first. No one even remembers what DOS is, but that was the first book. And then Max for Dummies came out soon after that. And I know Max. I use Max, and I considered myself pretty adept, but there was one thing I didn't know how to do, which had to do with fonts. So I was reading Max for Dummies, and I was just taken with it beyond belief, because it told the basics to basic readers without looking down to them, and then it was able to speak in an intelligent voice to people who knew a little something, as I did. And I said, oh my God, I was riding the Long Island Railroad into the city to work on a Saturday. I'll never forget the moment. It came into my head like something driven by a muse. And I said, oh, somebody has to write Wine for Dummies. Ed and I will write Wine for Dummies. And then it happened.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's quite a franchise, quite a brand. As you said, so there's a sensitivity to not dumbing it down. Were you worried at all, though, about the title, Wine for Dummies, that it would be perceived as pejorative, or, I don't know. How did you negotiate that?
I think to this day that is a little bit true to people who don't know the series and don't appreciate among other things, I remember in the early days, the publisher said the most important thing about our books is the authors. And I think people who don't appreciate the integrity of the authors, they can think, there was an Idiot's Guide that came out,
Oh, yeah.
But Dummies, I don't know. That's the title, and it's been a very successful franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in certain languages, it has inhibited translations, but obviously not that much with 38 languages that we've been translated into. I don't worry about it anymore. I think the book stands on its own, and frankly, I think it did from day one. And the franchise has been a great help in selling the book. The book has legs that it wouldn't if it were a one-off title.
That's true. That's true. No pun intended, I'm sure. But yeah, it certainly has proved itself with more than 2 million copies. My goodness. Okay, folks, I want to take a moment to just encourage you right now to share this video if you're enjoying it, please, because you know this is going to be a great conversation. So share the video, and even better, comment to your friends and followers why you're enjoying this conversation. And if you want to take your wine knowledge to the next level, join me on a free class, an online video class, How to Taste Wine Like the Pros, at nataliemaclean.com/pro. Okay, so Mary, I'm going to dive back into the comments because they've been coming in fast and furious. I'm going to have to back up here and find folks. Gilman says it's 35 degrees Fahrenheit, so we're back on the weather here. Marie Walsh is here. Let me just scroll down here so I don't miss anybody. Phyllis Cook is here. Hi, it's nice to be here. Nice to have you here, Phyllis. Jay Black says hi. Gwen Barton has joined us. Paul Hollander, Gwen Barton. Phyllis Cook says, my mother-in-law adopted numerous stray and wild cats and had them taken care of by the vet. Kept quite a few and found homes for many others. Jay says his cat is named Semyon. Another great name. Excellent. Joanna Cortell says, it's cold in Toronto, but the cats keep my soul warm. Joanna, you are one of the many people who asked when we were going to get Mary back, so here she is, and I'm glad you're here, Joanna. I know you're a strong supporter. Dave Head has joined us, and Shelley Evanson. All right. Okay, so Mary, what's the latest development with the Wine for Dummies book? Are you coming out with a new edition, or what's happened with that?
Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday. Excellent. Good timing. What edition is it? What number?
It's the 7th edition, and actually it represents a kind of a new look. The publisher has revamped the look of the book. The graphics are different on the cover and on the inside, and frankly, I really like them. We got to see them as we were doing the page proofs and all of that, and I think that they're very attractive. And so this is the 7th edition that we've done. The first edition was in 1995. Wow. And it comes out on Tuesday. I had to double check that. I couldn't remember anymore. I kept thinking, it should be here now. It should be here now, any day now. So I went on Amazon and I saw the 13th.
And do you update the content in the book for each edition, or what do you do to prepare for a new edition?
Absolutely. It is at least 20% new content. In this edition, we added information on the wines of Hungary, which we felt were, had gained enough critical mass. Of course, they're not all over the place, but in some major markets, you can find wines from Hungary, so we included them. We rewrote a lot of the Argentina section based on a visit that I made to Argentina earlier this year. And things like that, updating vintages, updating prices so that you're not looking at a price that was quoted 10 years ago, and then you hit hard reality when you look at the shelves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And are you doing anything around the launch? Like, do you have any activities planned, or you going to do a tasting with friends or anything like that?
Well, we will certainly open a bottle of champagne.
Yes. Which one? Cristal with the cat?
It might have to be. It might have to be. We'll see what we have. But no, thank God we're not doing a book tour, which, I mean, honestly, over 7 editions, I've had my fill of book tours. So it's actually okay with me that we're not doing that.
And you have an audio version of this book as well?
Of the first edition, and I did an audio version, yes.
Okay, cool. That's great. All right, because I wanted to ask you a bit more about Oh, Jay, sorry, you're a woman. You're not a man. Sorry. Sorry, Jay. That's a great. I love unisex names. So, but they do confuse me. So Lois has a question for you, Mary. At what point in your career did you decide? Oh, so she wants to jump right into the Master of Wine program. Okay, so why don't we? And we might come back. We will come back to the Wine for Dummies books, but I want to acknowledge Lois's question. At what point in your career did you decide to test for the Master program, and how long did it take you to achieve your goal? Because you're the first woman in America, in the United States, to achieve this prestigious designation. There are only 380 people worldwide, 51 in the U.S. I'm not sure how many women worldwide. Do you know that off by hand, Mary?
No, I don't. I considered going on the website and counting them, but I said, no, I'm not going to
Okay,
do
all right. But very few. Let's just say it's a small, prestigious group, a 10% pass rate. So back to Lois's question. How long did it take you to get the Master of Wine? What did you do to prepare and study?
Well, for the first half of my career, it was not even an option for us Americans. You had to be working in the British wine trade in order to take the exam. And then in the late 80s, it was opened up worldwide. This was through a grant, actually. I mean, it was a philosophical decision by the Institute of Masters of Wine, but also I suspect it was also a practical decision because the Madame Bollinger Foundation became a supporter of the Institute such that they could have paid employees. And I think that made the prospect of increasing the numbers a little more realistic. So in 1988, it was opened up to people outside of the UK. And I just knew all of the great masters of wine who were out there, my heroes, Serena Sutcliffe and Jancis Robinson and Michael Broadbent and Clive Coates, who was coming over to New York at the time to do tastings with us. And I was just filled with the possibility, could it be possible that I could be in their ranks? And so I applied, and the system is very different now than it was then, and I think all for the better because there's much more support along the way. It took me 5 years. I passed the theory part of my exam, my second try, which was terrific.
Yes.
Considering
it takes multiple tries for all of these parts, and 5 years is like condensed, I gotta say. But yes, continue.
well, considering no internet, considering no Oxford Companion to Wine, and all that kind of thing in those days,
right?
And then it took me another 3 years to pass the tasting exam, which I had already failed twice.
Mm-hmm.
So that was yeah. Well, that was my personal bugaboo. I think for some people are better at the tasting, and then they have to work harder at the theory, and other people are better at the theory, and then they have to work harder at the tasting. So it's just a question of your personal strengths. But
and what do they do for the tasting? What are you tasting wines blind and having to identify them?
We taste 12 wines a day blind for 3 days. Oof. And we write the answers. And so it's really much more about your reasoning. There is identification involved, but not just an identification, not really identification of the producer, unless it's like a classified growth Bordeaux or something that you should necessarily know, but identification of the type of wine it is, where it's from, the quality level, how, in some cases, how it was made, how it might be marketed. In other words, is this a premium wine? Is this a hand sell? Is this a mass market wine? So all of this, and you have to write your answers, and you have to explain what is in the glass that makes you come up with your answers. So if you're going down the path of, it could be an unoaked Chardonnay, could be this, and it turns out to be an unoaked something else from a similar climate, not an aromatic white grape variety, you can gain a lot of points along the way. So it's not exact identification. You have to prove that you can think about what you're tasting and draw conclusions from it.
Absolutely. So what was the toughest part then of the exam? So your tasting component was more challenging for you. So what did you do to improve, over the 3 tries? Obviously, you were tasting a lot of wines and practicing that way, but was there something that cinched it for you that really got you through it?
Yeah, there was. I remember once on the three tests, my scores, you have to have a B to pass, and my scores on the three tests were D, E, and D. And I said, oh my God, that's dead without the A.
Oh,
So, yes, the final time, I think what it was is I found my voice.
ah,
I think that I was trying to kind of have it both ways. Well, the positive aspects of this wine are this, and the negative aspects are that. And I was not coming down decisively
with an
on the
opinion.
wines.
Okay.
Yes,
So
yes,
your voice was
exactly.
saying, I think it's this, and that's why.
Yes. Well, I had to, and I came to understand that the people who were judging my paper, everything is numbered, so you don't know the name of the person. You don't know the nationality, except maybe how we spell color.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people who were judging my paper, they didn't know me. They never tasted with me. And I had to show them that I could taste wine at the level of master of wine. Damn it.
Damn it. I
And
like that.
it was a little bit of that damn it that carried me over the line.
That's good. Attitude. You need some attitude and some confidence. It's like, I'm here and this is what I think.
Yes,
Love
exactly.
it. Love it. That seems to be an attitude you've carried forward in other entrepreneurial activities, not only your book, but you also now run the International Wine Center in New York.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
So tell us
Yes.
about that.
Oh my goodness. I joined there. I had at one point in my life been working for PepsiCo, which was great to have the experience of being in a top corporation like that. But I was outside New York City. I wanted to be back in New York City. And not to, I wanted my own voice again. This is well before the Master of Wine episode, but I didn't want to have any allegiance to any particular brands. And the idea of working in wine education where I could believe what I wanted to believe, I could like what I like, I could have opinions that really appealed to me. So I joined International Wine Center as the director of education and then eventually became the owner of the business. And so I have been there for a very, very long time. And in the past 3 years, we became licensed by the New York State Department of Education as a licensed vocational school, trade school. And that's just wonderful because so much of what we do, we offer the WSET programs, which I know are very popular in Canada and were
Yes.
available in Toronto long before they were available in New York. But I was the first person that brought them to the United States.
Wow, you're a woman of firsts. My goodness, like William Jefferson or Jeff. Yeah, this is fantastic, Mary. I'm just going to jump back in the comments because they're flowing by. We're going to continue along that line in a moment. Lise Chiret says hello. She's from Northern Ontario. Lori Sweet, hello from Ecuador. Let's see. Okay, Alan Cameron is here. There is life after Pepsi, Mary. Lois has another great question. Once you became a master of wine, do you ever have to retest like a driver's license? Is there a goal? What is your goal? Are you currently working toward a new designation or anything like that?
No, I honestly, after Master of Wine, there is nothing else. And no, we do not retest. But I think we are all, I can't speak for 100% of the Masters of Wine, but those that I know, and I know many, many of them, are so dedicated. There's a love of learning, a passion for learning. And obviously, there's a little bit of ego that gets you started in the whole pursuit, but you have to love the learning.
Yeah.
And so we do things like we go on continuing professional development trips to other countries in the world. I mentioned I had come back from Argentina traveling with 40 Masters of Wine. We just Completed a wonderful trip to California, 50 of us.
Wow.
Most of us not from the US, most of us from Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France, the UK, India, to learn about the wines of California firsthand.
So what do 40 Masters of Wine sit down and talk about at dinner? Is it all wine talk?
Well,
Mostly?
mostly. Some of us know each other pretty well over the course of the years, and sometimes, it's grandchildren. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's often about travels, which are often wine travels, and it's about things that are going on in the world, and we share our knowledge, and a lot of talk about the program because we're all involved in education within the program, mentoring people or being examiners, different capacities, speaking at the study courses, the annual study courses for new students. So we're all very involved in that, and have our frustrations and our sincere wishes for the success of the students.
Awesome. So, Mary, you're a groundbreaker. You're a pioneer, especially in the world of wine as a woman. What's your take now on women in the wine industry? That's a big open question. You can take it as you like. What's your opinion right now?
Well, there are obviously more of us than ever,
Mm-hmm.
and we are at higher levels than we've ever been. Uh, I I see a lot more women in the restaurant end of it than I used to. And one of the things that was such a challenge for me in my own MW pursuit was finding the time to study. And I had to give up a lot. I had to give up a lot of entertaining, a lot of couples activity, vacations, things like that. And I could not have done it if I didn't have a spouse who was willing to help me in my pursuit. And then when I think about women who are in the restaurant business, I think, how can they possibly do it? If they have children at home, if they along their careers have pregnancies. This is the real challenge. I didn't have children at home. I didn't have pregnancies. This is all the more of a challenge. And I'm sure that they're doing it. I think that the men are stepping in basically to put it simply, I think the men are stepping in. They have got to be to make it possible for women to do this because we don't have wives. I think that goes back to Gloria. I think that goes back to Gloria Steinem that she needed a wife,
I do. Absolutely. Do you think, though, that there's a long way to go? Like, I mean, again, another general question, but have there really been steps ahead? I mean, there's more women in the industry, more senior positions, but really, how much more is there to achieve before, I don't know, parity, if you will?
There is room to grow for sure. And I think that for all of us on this continent, the Me Too movement has been opening our eyes, not to something that we didn't know, but realizing how pervasive it is, and realizing how much we really knew it, and look the other way, thinking, oh, well, guys will be guys, or whatever excuse we gave in our own careers. And I think when I see the not so much in the wine business, but corporations, I see how the guys are still running the show, and then I translate that to wine. There's a lot of room for us to grow.
There is a lot of room, and there are the Me Too things coming up in the wine industry. I mean, we've had it here in Canada for sure. And, I think there's a lot more that's to come. I don't think our industry is immune by a long shot. And I'm just talking about the wine biz as opposed to the restaurant industry as well. Yeah. We've heard stories there.
Yeah.
So I guess as veterans in the industry, Mary, I group you and myself together. What can we do for young women other than be role models like yourself? Like, how can we support them? There's young women entering this profession, still dominated by men, and what can we do for them?
Well, I think that there are lots of movements now for women within the wine industry. I'm on the board of directors of an annual event called the Women in Wine Leadership Symposium, which is sponsored by an importer, Winebow, in New York City every year. It's been going on for 5 or 6 years now. And it really is designed to help younger women in the field to get answers, or to know where to go to get answers, for the sake of the industry, realizing that this industry is only going to grow if we bring them on board.
Absolutely. Well put. All right. Got some more comments to come back to here. Wow. Okay. Let me just go back here to where we were here. Okay, so Lori says she's got a friend taking the working on her MW. Do you have any words of wisdom for her? I think she's looking for some encouragement there.
You have to do the work. I mean, that's the number one thing. You have to do the work. You have to do the exercises that you're assigned to do. Hand them in. Take the comments that you get back with an open mind and a thick skin.
Yeah.
And I would say seek advice not just from your mentor, but from other MWs that you might come in contact with, because I think we're a very open group. We're a very busy group, but we're a very open group, and we really do try to help people. And I would say trust yourself. You know your own blind spots. Fill those blind spots. Stay organized in your information. Keep your examples organized. This is one of the most important things I can say. For people who are not sitting the MW exam, it won't mean a lot, but you know, it's not enough when we're answering the theory questions to state a concept accurately, but we need to give real life examples of where it's happening in the world. And so keep your examples organized.
Okay, good advice. Thank you, Mary. Andrea Shapiro is here from Ottawa. Sam's logging in from BC. Liz Cheray says she's taking the WSET, was really tough for me while working a full-time job and managing a home plus volunteering in the community. I hear you, Liz. That's a lot. And Liz didn't have a wife either. Alan Cameron says, love that quote, we don't have wives. Lois Gilbert says, as leaders in the wine industry, do you discuss how climate change will affect the wines we love, especially California wines? Oh my goodness, and all those wildfires going on. So what's your take on that, Mary?
Absolutely. It's one of the key issues that we talk about all the time. And we're constantly getting input. You know, we're getting, in Argentina, for example, showing how they're going high up in the hills of the Andes, up to 1,000 meters in some cases, to find the right cool climates to grow the wines that they want to grow. Natalie, you know, you asked me in advance if I could sit down and share a glass of wine with anyone in the world, that living or dead, that I wanted to, who would it be and what would I talk about? And I thought that I would like to sit down with Émile Peynaud, the late Professor Émile Peynaud of the University of Bordeaux. Because he was a professor, he was a consultant to the first growths of Bordeaux. He was a consultant for many properties in Bordeaux, and he was probably the man who was most responsible for the change in style of the vintage, the climate, the weather. The weather in 1982 was responsible for the change in style of 1982 Bordeaux. But that was the first vintage that they called like the California vintage.
Yes.
Riper, softer, less driven by acidity, more driven by ripe tannins.
It's also the vintage that Robert Parker said allowed him to leave the law.
Yes, exactly. But he was right behind that vintage. That's true. And I would like to ask Émile Peynaud if, knowing what we know now about climate change, how might that have affected the decisions that he made about the changing style of Bordeaux, making it softer and riper, less defined by acid and more defined by ripe tannins. I would like to know that, because he might have thought differently about it. I don't know. It's an interesting hypothetical.
Absolutely. An interesting guest to have dinner with. I like your choice. That's great. Awesome. Phyllis Cook has a question here. I have always wondered about the specificity of measuring in wine. For instance, if a wine is a Cabernet, but its characteristics are not that of an outstanding Cabernet, so not typical, maybe something else, not sure what, but it tastes good, should that get a lower rating? I don't know if I'm making myself... Yes, you are, Phyllis. I don't know. In other words, can you measure wine just on its own as a darn good wine? So Mary, over to you. Like if a Cabernet is not typical, but it tastes good, Do you score wines, Mary, first of all? And then how would you answer Phyllis's question?
I do score wines. I score them on 100 points. I used to score them on 20, and I had to figure out like a translation grid for myself to carry me over into the 100 points. I do it when I write on wine review online, because it's necessary. But I do it for myself all the time, just to codify my opinion of the quality of the wine. So often we wine professionals taste wine blind. When we taste wine blind, we don't know that it's a Cabernet. We can believe that it has this tannin level, it has this cassis aroma and flavor. You judge it for what's in the glass. You judge it for its balance, its length, its intensity, its complexity, its concentration of fruit character. I like to judge wines for how they perform kind of across the length of the mouth. I rate lower wines that are all up front and don't carry through. That's very typical of an inexpensive wine. Up front, delicious, for people who taste it and put it in their mouth and go, oh, that's good, because all they get is the up front, So
Sure.
those wines are good for them. But the rest of us, we think about it. We think about kind of the architecture of the wine, which was a phrase that I learned from reading Emile Peynaud. And, what is the architecture of this wine? And I think if the quality parameters are there and you think it's a Cabernet, and then it turns out it's not a Cabernet, it gives you pause. If it turns out it's a Pinot Noir, then you could say, I think this is a damn good wine, but if you're buying it as a Pinot Noir, then don't. Something like that,
Sure.
but if you're judging it knowing that it's a Cabernet, you can fault it for not being typical. But around the world, there are so many different expressions of Cabernet, for example, just to use one grape variety. So you can, and different expressions include different quality levels. So if I drink a very inexpensive California Cabernet and it's kind of sweet, well, to me, doesn't cut it, But when you think about people who want that flavor profile, and what the wine costs, you think, yeah, okay, for them.
Sure. Well, I liken it to like I want to buy a detective mystery thriller, whatever book, and I got a romance story. It's a great story. It's a romance, though, not anyway. So it depends on, was your mind set on a certain style of wine and that's what you wanted, i.e., I want a detective mystery thriller, or are you just happy it was a good yarn? Like it was a romance, but it was well told.
Well, I think that's where in restaurants it's very important to, and I think that the activity of describing what you like in a wine, I think is very key. And so not going into a restaurant and saying, I like Cabernet, but saying, I like dry reds. I like medium to full-bodied reds. I like red wines that have tannin. I don't want them to be mouth drying, but I want to feel the tannin and the structure in my mouth. This all describes a typical Cabernet. And then trust the sommelier or the wine staff person to give you something. And I will buy something that I never had before in a restaurant on the slightest excuse. I mean, all I need is an excuse to try it, and I will try it.
Awesome. All right, folks. If you are enjoying this conversation, as I know you are, please take a moment to hit the share button and let your friends and followers know about this conversation. They can always join the replay, but they need to hear from you first. And even more importantly, tell them why they would enjoy this conversation. As you know, at the end of every chat, we draw for a prize based on those who shared and commented. So I'll be drawing for a winner from last week for a couple of bottles of Fairview wines. But if you share this video, including if you're watching the replay throughout this week, you'll get a copy of Mary's book, Wine for Dummies. And if you want to take your wine knowledge to the next level, join me for a free online video wine class at nataliemclean.com/pro. All right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to dive in. Garry and Mary from Kingston, New Brunswick, and Bedard is here from Panama. Excellent. Ian Osborne has joined us. Sam Hawk is saying, I understand you correctly, Phyllis. Yes, the quality of the wine is about its elegance and harmony. Greater complexity, veritable character is a factor, but that is not the end-all be-all. Alan Camera says, awesome interview. You're a great pair. Thank you, Alan. Peter Hellman says, I wish I could join you in that glass of wine with Emile Pinard. Mary, you probably a fellow New Yorker. Peter Hellman is here, and his book, Le Goût de Vin, The Taste of Wine, was the first serious wine book I ever bought. Expensive but priceless. Phyllis Cook says, okay, I'm sharing. That's great, guys. I love this. All right, so I've lost track of all of my questions because I just got carried away on our conversation here, Mary, which is fantastic. But I know for one of my questions I would love to throw at you, just out of the blue here, if you were to put something on a billboard in downtown Toronto, what would you have that billboard say? Why not?
Well, it certainly wouldn't say buy X brand. It would not say that.
Okay.
I think I would like to put up 3 words. I would like the words to say peace, community, and wine.
Oh, I love it. That's great. It's like eat, pray, love, but I like your billboard better, much better. Another thing I wanted to ask you, because I think you have it handy, is your favorite wine gadget. Just diving all over, but tell us, what have you got there and why do you love it?
Well, this is something that I've discovered only recently, and it's called Repour.
Okay.
Hopefully that's coming out frontwards and not backwards. And this is what it is. It is a little capsule, and it has a little piece of foil on the end. And when you open a bottle of wine and you're not going to drink it all, which can happen, I mean, I think a lot of us are trying. We understand that it's about quality, not quantity, and we understand that we don't want to get carried away in our alcohol consumption. And you can put this into a bottle and it will preserve the bottle. So we've seen over the years many different ways to do this, but I love this way because when you peel off this, this foil and you stick it into the bottle, there is a substance inside the capsule that absorbs oxygen. It converts the oxygen. I spoke to the inventor of this, who is a chemist or a physicist, I forget which. And there's something that draws, it's the pressure of the gases that causes the oxygen to go up into the capsule where the oxygen is combined and it cannot re-enter the bottle. So I had a very interesting, I tested it on a bottle that I had, samples that I was tasting. And there was a bottle 3 days old, half full in the refrigerator. And I had 2 wines from the same producer. And so I thought, what the hell, let me try. And I stuck the cork in, I stuck the plug in, the Repour plug, and I put it in and then a couple of days later, I opened up the 2 bottles. One just had the regular cork in, and it was like a fountain of youth. It was like the wine went backwards and was no longer oxidized. One wine was oxidized and the other one was not. And I just think it's great. Now, unfortunately, it's one of those things that you need to keep buying. This costs about $1, I think, depending on the volume that you buy it in, and it's good for 1 bottle of wine.
1 bottle.
It's good for the amount of oxygen in 1 bottle. So I take that to mean that if you use it for half a bottle and then you have another half bottle, you could probably use it again. But it's for the amount of oxygen in 1 bottle of wine. But I love it because, you know, it helps the freshness of the product.
Yeah. And do you like it more than the preserve spray and other ways of preserving wine?
I also like the spray. I like the spray a lot, but I can't keep it in stock. So it's a spray that displaces the oxygen with a heavier gas. Yeah. But I can't keep it in stock, and honestly, it drives me a little bit crazy that the can always feels empty.
I know. It's just weird. I keep I have to listen for it. Like, is there something really happening?
And so I just, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. That's great. Awesome. Okay, so Mary, this is, I can't believe how much the time has flown by. We're already at quarter to the hour. So, is there anything that we have not covered, Mary, that we should, that I've forgotten? Because this is just run away with us on the time here, which is fantastic. Great discussion. So, have we missed something that you'd like to cover?
I think in terms of wine education, I would like to say don't get scared by the information.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much information out there, and information in and of itself does not mean anything. One of the chapters in our book, we talk about lingo, jargon, and what the jargon is supposed to mean, but doesn't necessarily mean it. Like words like old vines, but then it's not regulated. So really, is it, things like that. Yeast strains. Sometimes people will talk to you about the yeast strains they use. Yeah, if you're an MS or an MW student, go for it. Gobble it up, write it down, turn on your tape recorder. But otherwise, as a consumer, it doesn't mean anything to you unless this person can tell you what those yeast strains do to the taste of the wine. So I would say don't get mired down in the information, and try to understand the significance of it, which I think actually the WSET, or the WSET as you call it, these courses I think really do that, because they parcel out the information in doses. At level 2, this much information. At level 3, this much more information, and learning to work with the information and understanding what's important in it. So that's something that I would say about learning about wine and studying wine.
Absolutely. Great advice. Great advice. So, Mary, where can we find you online and your books?
Well, I write for winereviewonline.com.
Okay.
I have a new column up every 2 weeks. And I'm on Instagram.
Excellent.
At mem.mw.
Okay.
Not always about wine, often about cats.
They pair well together.
And International Wine Center is on Facebook and is on Instagram also, and Twitter too, but I don't know. I'm on Twitter, but I haven't been doing it lately for various reasons.
No worries. And I assume your books are like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the online sellers and physical book retailers?
Yes, absolutely. And yes, they're available everywhere easily. That's one of the benefits of the very powerful Dummies franchise.
That's awesome. Mary, it's so exciting. I hope your launch on Tuesday of the new edition goes gangbusters, and I know it will. Like, they have a super successful launch. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us tonight. I could do a whole other session tonight, again in the future with you, but I appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Natalie. The time has flown. I can't believe it.
I know. Woof.
It was so easy and so much fun. And thank you all for listening.
Absolutely, guys. And stay tuned. I'm going to have a few more announcements, including the winner from last week. So stay with me. But Mary, I wish you good night. And thanks again for joining us here.
Good night, Natalie. Good night, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you. All right, folks. So stay with me here, and I will announce our winner. So wasn't that a great chat? I have not kept up with all of the comments here, but Jacqueline Mann is here from Tampa, and she has shared the video. Thank you, guys. So do take a moment before we wrap up here and share this video, because everybody can watch the replay, and you can qualify for a copy of Mary's book next week. So even if you're watching the replay, you can still share and take a moment and qualify. Alan Cameron says, every week you increase my ability to appreciate wines more. The landscape of wine, its terroir. Tonight, the architecture. Lovely. Oh my gosh. Edison Jetton says, I'm a WSET level 3 certified. Already have the introductory sommelier course. Do you think I have enough knowledge to pass the certified for the Canadian? for the CMS. I'm going to get back to you on that, Edison, because we're wrapping up here, but please watch the replay. And I look at all the comments here whenever they come in, including the replay comments. Tom Dean has joined us, joining late, but love the dialogue. I'm glad you joined us, John. Tom and John Steves is here. Jay, the woman Jay, is here. And Kathy Braid, great interview. Paul Hollander, good night. She's delightful. Yes, she is. Isn't Mary delightful? So our winner for a couple of bottles of Fairview Wines Goats to Rome is Phyllis Cook. And she was here tonight. I don't know if she's still online and live here, but Phyllis, congratulations. A couple of things to let you guys know about. Wednesday, we're going live again at 8 p.m. Eastern, Toronto, New York time on Facebook Live to talk about wine and cheese pairing, because I'm thinking about, pretty confident, I'm going to launch a new course for a beta test group, pretty exclusive, on wine and cheese pairing only. We're going to take the deep dive into wine and cheese pairing, but I want more feedback from you before we do that. We'll launch early December, but Wednesday is another open session sharing wine and cheese pairing tips. Let's get your ideas. What would you want to see in the course? What are your favorite combos? All of that. So please join me at 8 p.m. Next week, we have Garry Pickering from the University of Brock, and he is a professor there, and he's got a special wine aroma wheel to share with us and a super taster kit. He's brilliant. He's done so much research in tasting wine. Again, it's not going to be technical or nerdy, but it's going to be super informative and up your wine game, of course. So please mark in your calendar. Sunday Sipper Club again next week, 6 p.m. Sunday. For those of you in my Get Wine Smart course, we'll be doing another tasting of Rioja wines next week at 5 p.m. Eastern, cocktail hour. So I will see you then as a prelude, a warm-up at 5 p.m. Eastern. All right, guys. That's all I've got, other than we got a couple announcements, a couple launches coming up, a new audiobook version of Red, White, and Drunk All Over, and a new podcast. I'm launching a podcast. I'm going to tell you more about that next week. All right? So I hope something great is in your glass. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight and spending the time. I love this. As I've said before, it's the highlight of my week. Take care, and I will see you again, well, I hope Wednesday, and if not, next Sunday. Bye for now.